Well,
Hello.
low,
Hello.
low.
Kank. Kank.
Yank.
I know you love the kank, Mike Manley. You
I'm
love
all
it.
about the cankle kanks.
I love it so much I'm going to do it again.
Uh-oh.
Whoa! Kank.
I guess now we need to add some sound effects to that.
So me's just saying kank.
Yeah, if somebody wants to send us some sound effects, and then you can add that to. We need like a keyboard hooked up, just like a total, like what is it? Like Fred on the Howard Stern show used to have the keyboard that had all the sounds all loaded in, right?
The sequencer, yeah.
Kank.
What up, EJB? How are you? That's hilarious. Yeah, it's great that we have a little bit of transition, some transition animations. I want to maybe we need a new countdown, John. I don't know.
Do they have? Is that the only one they have?
Well, I was on Franco's podcast the other night, and he had a whole other thing. It looked like it was like let's go to the movies time. So I don't know where he got his, but like everybody's got the falling snow countdown. So we're gonna, we got to innovate.
Oh, right.
That's right. Oh, well, ready for the greeting? Well, hello. Welcome back to the podcast, your favorite pandemic podcast, Pencil to Pencil, or P2P as it's known in the streets. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you had a good week leading up to this podcast. I know a lot of people have been waiting for tonight, Mike, because you know what tonight is.
What is tonight?
Boot camp.
Boot camp.
Boot camp.
Boot camp.
That's right.
What is that? What is this boot camp of which you speak?
Boot camp. It's all over the map. Well, yeah. Before we get into, I said boot camp so hard I knocked the sponsor off.
The sponsor ran for cover.
Boot camp is when Mike and myself veer a little to the side. So instead of having
wait a minute.
Do you have sound effects?
We need sound effects for that, for veering to the side.
Yeah, veering. So as you know, Pencil to Pencil is a sister podcast of Mike's Draw magazine. And we're known for doing all types of interesting things with creatives, like interviews, tech talks, tool talks, things like that. But sometimes on the live podcast, we put that to bed for a minute and we do live art demos. And as I've been calling Mike lately, the Master Chief of Comics. You like that? You got to go along with the military theme. And I've coined myself the art supply gunnery sergeant. You call me Gunny in the streets.
Gunny. No, you can't say that in Philly. That actually would be kind of dangerous to say in Philadelphia. They're shooting too many people in Philly in the last.
Fair enough. Hey, what's up, D-Brad? Good to see you, brother. So what we do is Mike and I get together and cover a topic. Usually the topic isn't known to the audience before we go on. But Mike and I and some other people have been throwing around some things for the past couple of weeks that maybe will be great to bring up. So before we get into that, I gotta do some housekeeping.
It's got to sweep. We're going to be sweeping.
Yeah, I gotta do some light dusting. I want to give a shout out to our sponsors. You see the John, the world famous John up there. Let's give a shout out to our good folks at Graphically who make Quick Clip Studio Paint. Yes, that Clip Studio Paint. I think, Mike, for the longest time, people don't believe me. People don't believe it.
I don't believe you.
That's not
the longest time.
That's not the real Clip Studio Paint. That must be like the bootleg Clip Studio Paint. No, we're known in the streets.
PAAHN.
Yeah, this isn't the Wish.com version of Clip Studio Paint. It's the real thing. Mike, have you seen those memes where they talk, like, I think there was one when Falcon and Winter Soldier started, where you had the original Captain America, and then you had the Wish.com version. It was U.S. Agent.
That was like within an hour, I think. They were banging on that guy so hard, man.
With the chin. That's hilarious.
Said he looked like the old guy from Up.
He
They were using that face from the Up.
He's got up chin. That's great. What's up, JRD? Good to see you.
Good tonight. Doing good.
So let me finish my thing. Okay, so Clip Studio Paint is one of our proud sponsors, and also the publisher of Draw Magazine, our good buddy John Morrow, who is the publisher at Tomorrow's Publishing. Mike, are they doing? I know you.
I think last week. I think he has a sale going. He always has some kind of sale, but you should hurry over if you want print copies of Draw, because once all the remaining print copies are gone, they will only be available in digital. And I know some people like to have print. Like I love print myself, but
yeah.
Once they're out of print, they are out of print. And I actually have seen back issues going for pretty high money now.
Really?
Yeah.
Like on eBay
and Amazon. Used books.
Oh wow! Usebooks.com, Book Off, things like that. Yeah. Do you see? And maybe I shouldn't put this in the street, Mike, but you know how you can't ask a parent who their favorite child is. Do you have a? I favorite?
Can. I'm the favorite child. Okay.
Do you have a favorite issue of Draw?
I'm very fond of the first 4 issues. One, because it was like a real culmination of a dream to do it.
Yeah.
And it was a big learning curve, because I was also, on top of doing the interviews and everything, I was actually laying it out myself. I had to learn how to use Quark.
Oh man!
Right, yeah. So I was doing, the interviews. I was laying it out. I had friends help me with learn how to use Quark.
Yeah.
And then eventually I wised up and hired Eric, our man at Tomorrow's, to do that, because he was much better at it than I was. But my first jobs in art were working in a commercial art studio, and I was an art director at a newspaper, so I knew from publishing how to put it all together. But Quark was one of those weird programs, and they weren't very nice people, the company. Like whenever you had a problem, they were not very user friendly. You had to make all these, you had to make all these weird like Ditko fingers to like do all these key commands to do stuff. But they were industry standard until the smart people at InDesign said, "Hey, everybody, have a free copy of InDesign." And then once everybody, and I think that everybody said, boink, they jumped over as soon as they could.
Yeah.
So the first 4 issues, I think, 4 or 5 issues were probably still in my heart, because that was the beginning of the whole thing. And
you had in those first couple of, like, maybe the first 6 issues of the magazine, it was like, I don't know, it was like pure murderer's row of columnists too. Like Andy Parks was the first crusty critic. Brett and you were doing columns. Wasn't Alberto doing?
Alberto Ruiz was doing stuff, and Paul Ravoche was doing stuff. So there was a lot of. I mean, those issues still have a lot of great technical stuff in them. A lot of the technical things, as far as Photoshop or whatever, have changed. A lot. But anything that relates to drawing or storytelling, which is what we're going to be concentrating on tonight, is some storytelling. That stuff never goes out of fashion. In fact, it is probably what we're talking about tonight. I'll be talking about storytelling. It's probably never been more in demand than now, because every streaming service, every studio is just turning out tons and tons and tons of stories, tons of entertainment. there's never been more entertainment and a demand for more entertainment. And so what I'm going to be talking about tonight, these fundamentals of storytelling, are something that have never been more in demand through, again, a lot of stuff every day you're reading about how comics are being adapted into film. A lot of people are not just going into comics, but they're going into film, going into storyboarding. So we're going to sort of talk on the differences and the similarities a little bit between comics and film. And I think maybe clear up some issues or clarify some borders between the two mediums that I think sometimes get a little confused, I think, today.
All right. I love it, Mike. The pump is primed. But before we get into that, just to finish up my housekeeping, let's introduce who we are. Guys, if you're new to the podcast, you're talking to two world-class cartoonists who bring you this fine podcast. I'm Jamar Nicholas, Philadelphia's favorite son. And also, we never talk about what we do, Mike. I have a series at Scholastic Graphics that I'm currently working on. Also, Mike Manley, who's...
What's it called?
Leon the Extraordinary. The first book in the series will be out in every store in the world, spring 22.
You will be forced to buy a copy upon entering any store within a year.
That's right.
You're going to put your mask up, and then within the side of the mask is like a price tag.
That's
right. for the Leon book. Well, actually, you should also tell people that you self-published Leon first, which is right behind you. There you are. See there.
Yeah, there he is. There he is. Welcome to Leon Lane. Yeah, and which I think was a really great kind of introduction to the character, and also me being in the self-publishing realm for so long and knowing how to bring in an audience, and I've already had my own engagement. I feel like there's some value to my new family at Scholastic because I kind of came in already knowing what I was doing. You know what I'm saying? And I think, which sounds like something in the past would be a burden, I think now, maybe we could talk about this, Mike, that having seasoned creatives in these new spaces brings a whole different type of value to the relationship than, Johnny 22-year-old.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that because right before I was on the podcast, I was Zooming with our ace, Steve Conley, our Scotty, as we say. And we were talking about that, how now because you can Kickstarter and do a lot of these things, if you can go on and Kickstarter and establish an audience now, when you go in to pitch your product to a publisher, you can already show them, hey, I got a following, I got people, I've got fans, I got a fan base, I got a mailing list. And I think they look at you a little bit differently than if you're just coming in cold, because you can actually show them you already have something that has interest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like, I think just having the I don't know, the kind of bandwidth for already coming in with an established idea of how things work and what sells, right, I think is invaluable to a company, and everybody's taking risks, right? Everybody talks about the risk and what happens and the what if it doesn't work. But, when you already have kind of named people coming in, maybe it's not such a hard reach, versus starting completely from scratch. So yeah, I think.
Well, everybody likes something that's already successful, right? It's easy to say yes to success, right?
That's right.
When you go in and everybody, I mean, it's funny, very often people say, we want something brand new. We want something we've never seen before. And then you show them something that they've never seen before and they go like, oh, yeah, I'm so sure about that. I've never seen this before. This I've seen.
Right.
It's,
that's very true. And, what was really interesting about Leon is that I was kind of coming to a crossroads in my self-publishing career anyway, like right when Leon kind of came out from the Kickstarter and I fulfilled all the Kickstarter things. And then I was just like, I need to do more with this. And I think there's something that happens with a lot of people's Kickstarters is that they kind of get caught up in just trying to fulfill whatever the backing thing was and not really look at it as now you have a product that is still fresh and you can go and do whatever you want with it afterwards. So I ran it up the flagpole. I was campaigning heavy those couple of years when I had Leon out. Because with me, I don't do a lot of stuff you don't go into the comic shop and see Jamar Nicholas stuff every month. So whatever I have, I got to really squeeze. I got to squeeze all the juice out of it.
Yeah.
And it was really fortuitous for me that I found a market that was hungry for this. There wasn't a lot of things like what I was doing. I won a couple of awards for it, which was really great, and came right in at a space where people were looking for something just like Leon, and here we are. So, I'm really excited about the future. I hope everybody goes out, and you can pre-order it now. Target, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, just cop it. And enough about me. Also, our good buddy Mike Manley is the illustrator behind 2 syndicated comic strips at the same time. The Phantom, yes, that Phantom, not the other Phantom, that Phantom, and the other legacy strip, Judge Parker,
which has been going since 1953.
Well, you weren't drawing it since 1953.
No, I wasn't alive in 1953, nor was I alive in 1936 when they started the Phantom.
Wow. And Mike, and this is what I love about boot camp is almost kind of like Mike and Jamar freestyling. Mike, did you ever feel a pressure or some sort of like legacy you had to live up to when you kind of signed on for these strips that came before you? Like how do you think about your time on the strips?
I think of the strip when you're inheriting a strip. I always liken it to inheriting a role on Broadway, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you're playing King Lear, right? Or you're the man in the gray flannel suit, right? So you're playing a role that's been well established, a property that's been well established. In the case of the Phantom, I think I was the 6th or 7th artist, maybe.
Wow.
Yeah. Maybe less.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it was the 2 guys, then it was Barry, another guy, then I think Graham, and then Paul, and then me.
Wow.
So in the strips.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about doing a syndicated strip, or what is I guess they call a legacy strip, is that you are appealing to a fan base. Like, a lot of people are drawing Dagwood or Blondie, but you can't tell, right? Because the idea is that it will just always look the same, right? And more or less, it's the same with the realistic strips, although not every realistic guy draws the same. So I would sort of say, because I'm influenced by that era of cartooning, and I like Dan Barry's work, and the guys that Dan Barry liked, I sort of feel like what I'm doing is I'm trying to do it in a classic style.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of the same with Judge Parker, although I think I draw more realistically than Harold Ledoux, the guy who did it for like 50 years. And again, when I got that strip, it was because Ed Barretto had been doing it, but he had fallen ill, and so they actually asked me to imitate Ed Barretto's style, like they had to ask Ed Barretto to imitate Harold Ledoux's style.
Yeah.
And so it's not like on Spider-Man or Batman or where you're working for Marvel or DC. You come in and do your style. In the strips, it's more or less they want you to kind of conform, and then eventually you can kind of like go and do your own. At least that's the way it was. I don't know if it's that way now because it's changed so much. Hearst and King and United Features and all the syndicates have changed quite a bit, and the old guard is pretty much gone on, and they have new people running it. And but the fans of the strips are very picky.
Yes.
And if you don't draw Little Orphan Annie looking like Little Orphan Annie, and if Linus doesn't have that dent in his head, you know what I mean? These people are they are what I call fingernail counters, right? They look at it and go, there was not a fingernail. This looks a little different. They're very, very, they're very protective.
Yeah.
And they're very vocal.
Yeah.
About, I don't know if I like the way this is going. Luckily, I seem to have been accepted, and people seem to like what I'm doing, which is good. But yeah, it's different than working for Marvel or DC, where you just go and you just do it.
Right.
Nobody says you've got to try to, imitate somebody's style.
Right, and it's got to be hard to put your own stamp on it. We talk about style a lot here on the podcast, but to kind of just put your own personal spin on things, and also keep it fresh, and also satisfy the insatiable hunger of the longtime fan base, right? Because we all know that going to the comment section of any of those Comics Kingdom, they're cesspools. Right, and you would think, oh well, hey, it's Blondie. What could go wrong? It's
any message board is that way now, though. I mean,
true.
Again, that was something I think I was talking to somebody about the other day. I mean, that's just in general now. There's so much entertainment. We are overstuffed. We're like a turducken or whatever. You got a pig stuffed inside of a chicken, stuffed inside of a water buffalo, stuffed inside of a cow. There's so much. But at the same time, if you follow any social media, everybody hates everything. They either love it, and you see fan art. That's how I judge whether it's something that's a success. Right. If you see fan art of like Loki or Baby Yoda, then right? Or the new What If, right? If you see fan art of it, they've done a good job.
Right.
Right. If you don't see fan art of it,
right.
Not a good job. It wasn't well received, I should say.
Yeah, The Mandalorian was a great testament to that. Baby Yoda was everywhere before he even had a name. It was like, yo, Baby Yoda.
I still like Baby Yoda better than
Grogu.
Right,
yeah. You know what's good with Grogu? A little flaxseed.
little garlic and Grogu go well together.
We have a question, Mike, before we jump into the lesson. Our good buddy Michael Angelo Tucci. Hey, Mike, how are you? I remember him from PCAD. He was a great student. Question: how would you compare the life of a freelance comic artist versus the life of a major brand? You like the way he said that, Mike? Major brand artist, DC, Marvel, etc. Well, let me start with that.
What do you mean, like a major? I mean, somebody working for Marvel and DC, or working for the strips?
You know what? Maybe Michael will add to that, but I'm thinking maybe it's just like a freelance. You're doing, like Fiverr gigs, or just, doing stuff to keep your bills paid, versus somebody who draws ghostwriter.
Well, everything is so different from the early part of my career to the middle part of my career to now.
Yeah.
Right. Now I have a contract with King Features for both strips. So I know that I've got at least a year or sometimes 2 years guaranteed of work. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. And I would assume that probably what would happen, because your pay is based upon subscriptions and how many papers and whatever, what would probably happen is they probably wouldn't outright cancel the strip. They would just cut your pay.
Right.
Right. Because it's like, oh, we used to have 500 papers. Now we got 350.
Sorry.
So, right.
Right.
And then it's up to you as the artist to decide whether you can still do the strip for that much money.
Right.
There used to be contracts when I was first at DC, when I was first at Marvel. There were contracts you could get, who they were called You could be under contract, exclusive contract, or you could be a continuity contract, which means it would be 12 issues.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think any of those exist anymore.
Yeah.
And so it was basically a word of mouth. Hey, do you want to do this? Hey, we're looking for somebody to do that. You'd go into the office. Hey, you want to ink this? Hey, you want to draw that? Right? It was really a word of mouth thing.
Mm-hmm.
And your way of working was based upon your interpersonal contacts, relationships with the editors, right? Now, basically everybody I worked with, for the most part, 99.99999% of the people that I worked at Marvel DC are gone.
Mm-hmm.
Thus, all of my old contacts,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's as much a word of mouth and verbal handshake, because the bulk of my career has been verbal handshake.
Right.
Bulk of my career has been, I know this person knows that person. Hey, do you want to ink this? Hey, do you want, you'd go in, you drop off a job, you pick up another job. Well, nobody goes in anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody goes in the office anymore.
Right.
So in some ways, it's really hard to say what it would be like now, because I think there's other ways that people go about trying to get work through social media, right? I mean, I never got a job when I was originally working for Marvel and DC ever through social media, because it didn't exist.
Right.
Right. Now, I stopped doing monthly comic books in 1996 when I went to work for Warner Brothers in animation.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then when I came back in the early 2000s, and I would jump in and out, in and out, and in and out, that was, again, based upon my having worked on the shows. Oh, they're going to do a Superman comic. I worked on the Superman show, things like that.
Right.
I got to know those editors. So it's very different now. So I would say that if you're a freelancer now, you really have to maintain a good social footprint. And I think you have to hobnob. It used to be to go to conventions. Every time I would go to a convention, I would pick up a job.
Yeah.
Of course, like, conventions are kind of like a sand trap right now for some people. Like, I'm not doing any conventions. I know some people are doing conventions.
Yeah.
But it's also the companies don't spend the money to send editors to conventions like they used to.
Yeah, that's also true. Yeah, I remember when we would do San Diego or whatever, or New York, the first thing that you would hear rumbling through here is like, oh, Marvel's not here.
Right.
DC, there's nobody from DC here. Like, you could hear that in the hallway, right after you flash your badge to get in. So, that's totally true also.
Yeah. I think I would say by the mid-aughts, they stopped sending, especially once Marvel went bankrupt. Mm-hmm. And then they would, because they used to send everything. They have huge booths and everything. And then it was basically, like, they'd have them here in Philly, at the Wizard shows. Yeah. And then they stopped coming.
Yeah.
So your access to editors was more limited. So I hope that sort of answers your question.
Yeah, that was a really interesting question and a great answer. I mean, I almost want to think at the end of the day, like, everybody's freelancing. The people who aren't freelancing are, Shayna, who works in the building. You know what I'm saying? Who comes in on Monday with their sunglasses at Starbucks and sits at their desk and works. Those people,
Well, I will also put it to you this way. Now, I have a contract, and I've had contracts with various companies or whatever. But as my agent would tell me, a contract is only as good as the two parties intended to be. Yeah. Now, if tomorrow I have a contract with ABC Comics to do 12 issues of, Night Fist, and they decide that they're going to screw me, and
it is Night Fist,
right? Night Fist, right? And they don't do it.
Yeah.
Then I have to take them to court, which is going to cost me money to take them to court. So I got to find probably a trademark or contract lawyer, which is going to be a minimum of $150 an hour, a minimum of probably $500 just to start, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that means that if that's happening, it's going to cost you money to get your money. And then you have to figure out, if this thing's going to go to arbitration, not going to go to arbitration.
Right.
I'm hearing an echo a little bit for some reason. Do you hear it?
No, but I believe you.
Yeah.
Let me try to close some things. Go ahead.
Okay. Anyway, you could spend a fortune. Let's say your contract would have been worth $50,000 to do those issues by contract. But by the time I go and I get a lawyer, and my lawyer's eating it up. So you got to try to sue maybe for damages or their lawyer's fees or whatever. And I actually have already experienced stuff like this when I first started self-publishing. I sued a company for copyright infringement. And because I spent the money to do the logo, the trademark, and the copyright, and did all the stuff legally, I was able to sue them. But the trademark lawyer was $200 an hour. So by the time I won my lawsuit, at least half or more than half of my money that I got out of the settlement went to pay the lawyer. So again, you have to have the money and the wherewithal to be able to sue somebody if they decide that they're not going to be a player. Again, these are the kind of things that people don't really think about when you're trying to get a job being an artist, but they can definitely affect your income.
Yeah, right. And if you think about how, and maybe as a side thing, real quick, I had some people reach out to me from a Facebook thing where it's like, oh, you went to high school here. I need an animator. And somehow my name came up. And that turned into this big thing of me trying to like educate this person on first, like, what exactly are you asking me to do? And what are you trying to do? Like, I try to help people. I'm pretty firmly set in that I can't do it for you, but I'll at least point you in the right direction. And by the time we finished talking, they didn't want animation at all. They needed somebody to do like a character, like a mascot for a clothing company. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay.
Which wasn't actually animating then.
No, there was no animation involved. So like, I had to kind of cut through all of that. And, I passed off some names to them. And I said, and this is interesting, just in case this comes up somewhere else, and this is all of a freelance thing. I said, for something like you're asking for, just off the top of my head, and I'm not saying I'm going to do it, I'm not, but just something like that will cost you from $100 to $1,000 just off the top of the head. And the person said, which was great, oh, well, thanks for that. I was thinking somewhere in the middle. I said, great, because you'll get what you pay for. You could go to go to Fiverr, nobody's happy, and it's all going to be a giant mess. Or you just pay a freelancer who knows what they're doing, the proper amount, and you'll get good stuff back. So
you pay a real plumber to come fix your crapper, or you pay your brother-in-law who says he's a plumber.
Right. And I don't want to lose Michael's question, but it's kind of like, I don't know. I feel like everybody's trying to just get through their week with doing their work to the best of their ability and not get screwed, So
yeah.
Thanks for the question, Mike. Our buddy Angela Scott, what's up, Ange? Says, so unfair. Wish it ended up that they gave you your money and pay for the legal you incurred.
Well, you can sue them for your legal fees, but that does not mean that the judge or the arbiter will actually award that. I mean, and the more money, and again, this was not a kind of case where I was going to be getting, millions of dollars or anything,
Right.
But it behooves any of you out there who are thinking about self-publishing to do some research, to find out about copyright, to find out about trademark, do a copyright or to do a trademark search to find out if there's somebody else doing Night Fist, right? Because you don't say, oh, I've spent $10,000 developing Night Fist. It's launching today, and then the next day you get a cease and desist letter from the guy who actually owns the trademark on Night Fist.
Yeah.
Right. And if you say to yourself, I would say this to every class I would teach of budding young cartoonists. If you were to say to yourself that spending $300 to $500 to do the work yourself, or to hire somebody to do the work, to help you do the work, that your idea wasn't worth spending that much money, then your idea has no value.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right. Well, what you know what? Kind of going back to that other thing is that, and this is something I see a lot. There's a lot of people that feel like if I put this into the world, somebody's going to steal my idea.
Well, somebody could steal your idea. I mean, people steal Disney's ideas all day and make T-shirts, and then they have a whole building of lawyers and
Yeah.
people. If I'll tell you what, go make a bunch of Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck drawings, put them up on eBay, and see how long they last. They're gone like that because they have people who do nothing but scour all those places looking for illegal contraband.
Yeah.
Disney contraband.
Yeah.
You know, and there's that gray area that every fan and every comic artist knows that when we go to a convention and I draw a picture of Darkhawk, I don't actually own that.
Yeah.
But they let everybody go because it's like it's free promotion for them.
Right.
Right. So if any artist out there, anybody out there is getting a sketch, unless it's like Jamar drawing Leon, which he owns, everybody is allowed to sort of skate by in fandom.
Right.
Right. But there was a concern in the beginning when Disney bought Marvel. Like, oh,
they're going to crack down.
They're going to go through, right. Yeah. Because they did actually go through Artist Alley or the conventions, and they got rid of all the guys selling bootleg tapes.
Yeah, those guys are gone. Yeah.
You know, that was like 5, 6, 7 years ago now.
How am I going to get to see Mighty Orbots now? What am I going to do now?
Now you got to find Mighty Orbots on, some pirate bay of the Dark Coast, or, one of those, sub Reddit or whatever,
Yeah, no, I remember that they were everybody was afraid that they were going to shut down artists doing sketches, or even the print wars. They're going to come down and rip down your booth because you're selling, flash prints. If you didn't work on the book, then you're at risk.
Well, technically, the people that are selling multiple images of multiple copies of the same image at any convention are really the biggest offenders because they didn't pay a license. So all those other companies that make posters pay a license to Disney or Henson or DC or whoever for the rights to print that stuff.
Yeah.
Right? They pay a licensing fee to do that. And then some guy comes along and erects a 19-foot banner and 40 tables in a convention and sells multiple copies of like Harley Quinn doing everything. Well, that guy didn't pay. He paid for the table, but they didn't pay a licensing fee to be able to sell that stuff. So like all the T-shirts you see, most of the T-shirts that are here of all the superhero stuff, they had to pay a licensing fee.
Yeah.
Now, maybe the manga stuff that you see from Japan, maybe they didn't. They might be able to get away with it.
Yeah.
There's some bootleg stuff in there, right?
Right.
But if you got the Bat logo, they paid somebody.
Yeah. That's just how it works. But you know what? Everybody's chomping at the bit for us to get started, Mike. So I think we're going to get started. What's going to happen, you guys, is we're going to do a lesson. I'm going to just keep things going. I play the devil's advocate / layman to Mike's drawing. I'll ask him silly questions like, yo, that look real. How you make it look real? Well, maybe I won't do that tonight. And if you guys have questions while we're in the live, if you're watching on Facebook, put it in the comments. I think that's how it works. And YouTube in the chat. And I'll see them. Maybe I'll put them on if it's adding value to the conversation. But Mike has prepared a really interesting lesson tonight. So Let me hit the cank and we'll get started. Where's my cank? You ready?
Oh, oh,
Boot camp.
oh, Kank. We
Cank.
need one of the boot camp doing that now.
Oh yeah. So, all right, Mike. What's on the plate tonight?
Okay, so as I was mentioning earlier, tonight's little mini lesson is a storytelling lesson, and we're going to sort of discuss the differences between storytelling that you see in movies and in comic books, because I see a lot of crossover between people doing stuff in comics that's influenced by movies. And it used to be in the old days that comic strips influence cinema. But now I see it's really coming back, and there's a lot of storytelling that works good in film that I don't think is as emotionally successful in a comic book. Okay. And one of the things I'm going to use as an example tonight is a storytelling example of, say, like a restaurant scene. Not something dynamic like, people punching each other or whatever, which is a lot easier to do. But if you're doing like Clark Kent and Lois Lane in The Daily Planet, or one of the lessons I would give in the beginning of my storytelling class would be two people having dinner in a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's really about the acting, and it's about the shot choice in support of the narrative, in support of what you need to see, and you looking for moments or things to enhance the storytelling and why you choose a particular shot to do that. So one of the things I'm going to start out with, just to sort of give everybody you can see share my screen here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And guys, if anybody has questions that are pertaining to the lesson, feel free to ask. I'll try to get it on.
So to start, every story you see, whether it's a comic or a movie, is basically made up of one of these 6 shots, right?
Can you green dot that, Mike?
Green dot, what do you mean?
Like biggerize it?
No, that's as big as I can make it.
Okay, I was trying to blank out the mirror in the background.
We start out with an establishing shot, and that shows us where the story is taking place, right? So this, you can see this guy is on top of he's a Tarzan guy or a hunter or something, is on top of a rock. You can see where he is, in the jungle, in the clouds. You can see where the person is, right? The next is another establishing shot, but it's a little bit closer in, so you can see the house. So it's showing a very specific place, right? The next is what I call a medium establishing shot, which is you see people and the environment. Now, like most sports shows, more sporting events, like if you're watching basketball, they're either establishing shots or medium establishing shots. So you can see the people running up and down the court and shooting.
Mm-hmm.
If you're watching a tennis match, right? If you were using a medium shot, which is like waist up then you wouldn't see the background. You wouldn't really be able to see the players in relationship to each other. And so we want to see the players in a sporting event dunking on each other, right? We want to see them scoring the touchdown. We want to see that. Then they have the additional footage later of the extra cameras being closer, slow motion, things like that. But when you're watching the actual live event, they're showing you the wide shot, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the medium shot is to show the character and important dialogue, right? The next would be a close-up, which is, of course, where you really see in live action, especially the actor. You see, Pacino going for the Academy Award. All right. And then you have the extreme close-up. And of course, you rarely have the extreme close-up. That's probably the least used shot of any. But every story is basically woven out of a combination of these type of shots. And the reason you choose that shot, you might choose a close-up or over a extreme close-up or an establishing shot or a medium establishing shot, is to serve the story, right? That's one of the things that many young and many novice storytellers are afraid to do, which is to pull back and to show things. I used to always say when I taught the class, I used to have a little rhyme that if you don't show it, they don't know it.
And I see what you did there.
Right? And if you know the story in your head, right? You know the story you're wanting to tell. You know what's going on. But the viewer does not know what's up here. The viewer only knows what you show them.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this again is regardless of style, right? Whether it's realism or anime or whatever. This is the building blocks of being able to tell a story. And so clarity and priority of story is what you're trying to show. This has nothing to do with drawing style.
Right.
And so I would give a handout, and you can make one of these up yourself. Again, it's very simple. It's just you need to know why you're choosing the shot. What are you showing here, right? And what is the order in which we are showing these shots, and why are we choosing to show it a close-up now or a medium close-up? And so that's just the sort of the primer. The next thing will be now we'll go into a little bit more detail. And one of the things I would do in the very beginning of the class, and I suggest this to everybody, is to start simple and draw a grid, right? Just draw a grid. A simple six-panel grid to break down your story. One of the things that stops most artists is they get sort of ahead of the story. And what I do when I teach the class is just everybody start with this simple grid. Then later on, you can adapt it. You can change it. You can make this horizontal, etc., etc. You can change your panel sizes. You can break something into 2 panels if you need. But the main thing is to be able to figure out what you need to tell. And tonight I thought one of the things we would cover would be things like being in a restaurant, the more pedestrian stuff, because that is usually the weakest stuff in everybody's portfolio, is drawing the pedestrian stuff. Now, in the case of something like Judge Parker, I draw that all the time, and I actually got a lot better at doing that. And so one of my first storytelling assignments would be to draw 2 people having dinner in a restaurant, and maybe they have a disagreement, and maybe one of them gets up and storms off. Okay. And so what I would do is I would start out with a you can write your own little story if you want.
There's a plug-in for Man Bun Man, who's the unofficial
Yeah, right,
mascot of boot camp.
right. So I'll zoom in a little bit here. So just to start out my story, I'm going to start out with an establishing shot of a restaurant. And again, the drawings I'm going to be doing here are to just sort of speed through the storytelling process. They're not meant to be beautiful
Right.
drawings on their own. But let's say I just had a restaurant. Now, I find that if you draw a slight perspective on things like that, then it's easy, right? So I could have a restaurant, and I could put a car maybe in the foreground here, a vehicle in the foreground, and maybe it's in a city, maybe it's a fancy restaurant with fake palm trees outside.
That's my favorite spot.
Right. And then you'd have the name of the restaurant. Maybe it's got some nice windows. Maybe it's got a dome so light can come in. All right. And so right now I have a real basic establishing shot.
Mm-hmm.
Foreground element. And again, one of the things you always remember is you now are in control of everything. So the first thing you do after you do something like this is you would actually go look at a real restaurant. You would go look at multiple real restaurants and you would get reference, but this is again just sort of to break it down. The next step after you break it down, I think, is to go get all your reference, right? And I've done a lot of this, so I have a lot of reference sort of already stored in my head, but a lot of people will not in the beginning, and so they're sort of trying to make up something without the information. So if you can't draw a car, you're not good at drawing cars, you're not good at drawing trees or restaurants or whatever, get the reference for it,
Right.
So let's like start this out, and then maybe there's a doorman, maybe there's people coming in. Again, I've left a little room if I want a narrative there, some dialogue or narration, right?
Mm-hmm.
Looking at this, okay, may I start out by making the inside of the restaurant where people come in. So I start with the space first, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you could have maybe the podium where there's the
for the maitre d',
right,
yeah, or the greeter as they call them in
right, and maybe the girl, maybe the guy would be sitting here, and maybe he's looking at his watch.
Oh, because Shorty's late.
Right.
Welcome to PJ Hooligans.
Right. And maybe his date is coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And again, when I'm laying out my stuff, my drawings are no more
Mm-hmm.
finished than this, right?
Yeah.
Because what I'm doing is I'm thinking about what I'm trying to draw and not trying to get caught up in the mechanics of the drawing, but the mechanics of the storytelling, right? And maybe, you could still see the doorman.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the doorman has opened the door for the lady to come in.
Right.
And then I can use this to sort of unite our composition, frame our composition, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're being shown to their table. So again, a lot of this in the beginning might be just setting up stuff, establishing stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I might be establishing the restaurant. So again, space first, because once I have the space, then I could say, okay, I'm going to put their table. They're being shown to their table. Maybe the table is here, sort of a rhomboid shape,
Mm-hmm.
right?
And one thing I want to kind of add while you're blocking this in is that I think some people may be fascinated by not even just the magic trick of kind of drawing this out of thin air, but it's just also how you're basically asking yourself questions and answering it on the page, right? Because I think you might have somebody who looks at this and goes, "Well, how do you?" There's a confidence thing that we're not talking about, Mike. How do you know to do that versus not doing that, right? Like the establishing shot and all those type of things are very smart parts of speech in comics. But maybe you can talk about, Mike, in the panel 3. Why would you make this kind of open establishing shot shot with the perspective versus another shot that you're not using, if that makes sense?
Well, I'm thinking here that I want to show, maybe there's a waiter here coming in and he's got their food. There's a table here, there's a table here's their table. Again, sort of framing. You can see them coming in. You can get a little bit of the space. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Now I may go back later
Mm-hmm.
and change this idea,
Right.
elaborate on it. Maybe there's some, pillars inside. Some fancy paintings. Right. Again,
Mm-hmm.
the details of the location, the details of these people sitting here, the details of the waiter,
Right.
all that stuff, right? But I'm just thinking, okay, I'm showing some people,
Mm-hmm.
the table, the lady taking them, the hostess taking them with the menus, the man walking with his girlfriend arm in arm to the table, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so the most important thing is to set everything up, right? So it's very easy for anybody to follow along now. Okay, we've got the establishing shot of the restaurant. We go inside the restaurant, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm using a frame here. Again, I'm always thinking like, how can I frame things?
Yeah.
How can everything in this background is mine to use
Mm-hmm.
or to not use. I can actually I can make the table a little bit wider.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I find that if you do a sort of a rhomboid shape, you already start to get some sort of perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So here, I could do that. Then you see they're going right to the table.
Right.
Right.
You just kind of like nudge them into the shot just by changing the angle of the table. Right.
Right. Now, maybe I would want a close up of the couple. In general, I think it's a good idea to leave if you have a talky scene, to leave room for a balloon. It's always good to draw space for a balloon.
Yeah.
And the space for the balloons generally tend to be at the top, although you could put a balloon at the bottom here if you want it. But I'm thinking, okay, here's the guy talking to the gal. we can make it man bun if you want.
Yeah, that'll make JRD very happy. He's always getting his dates into trouble, man. This guy. He's got a bad Tinder rating.
And again, these are thinking drawings. So later I could go on again and I can do this in any style I want. But I'm thinking, and just thinking, I want to see the couple talking. Is she mad? You still have that ridiculous damn bun on the top of your head.
But babe, babe, come on.
Right. Now, do you, again, if you have these kind of windows outside, do you carry that through, in the background on the inside? You're always, you're trying to do anything you can to relate the space, make sure it's space. You could even have a couple other people. Man Bun is so cool with his. Another thing is the angle at which you choose to show people's faces.
Right.
Right. Now, this face, I can see this angle. I can see his face and her face. And I kind of also carry another thing visually is to carry, I think sometimes along with dialogue, is to carry your figures at approximately the same height. Works very well also in comic strips because it's just an easier read to go. Now, if I take that out and let's say I move, it also gives me the room there, but let's say I wanted to move them up. You will see how that changes the feeling of the flow from the panel to panel as far as the continuity. Right. Already, now you can get more of the figures in there. Now you can cover top of his head and, and you could, but you're not going to have as much room for dialogue. You're going to have to start covering the bodies.
Yeah.
Right. The other thing that happens the difference between, let's say, this so far and filmmaking. So in filmmaking, you would have a lot more shots between here, right? You would have an establishing shot, which you may truck in on, and then you might have the guy, looking at his watch. You may have a shot of the girl running across the street, or you may have a shot starting of the restaurant and then truck out to show the restaurant and the guy walking in and then him coming in and then maybe the doorman opening the door, right? You have a lot more shots, but in comics, we have to condense things. We have to do a lot of condensing in comics. The other thing that we do a lot in comics is we do a lot of shots where you have what I call over the shoulder shot. So if we say the couple is now seated, and again, I can draw this sort of a rhomboid kind of shape. One of the things also about drawing people at tables is it can get pretty complicated because you've got, the table, the legs of the table, the legs of the chair, the people's legs sitting on the chair. It can get pretty complicated. So in general, what I found is that you try to crop away the people sitting. However, you might want to, in the beginning, especially for either shoot reference of people sitting in chairs, or you might have to draw the chair, the table, and then relate it to this chair.
Mm-hmm. There's probably people in the room who are groaning right now, like, ugh, trying to put people in a chair is the worst.
Well, the secret to drawing a person in the chair, as you can see, I'm just thinking very geometrically.
Yeah.
The secret to drawing a person in the chair is once you get the chair in, right? And I guess this is all freehand.
Mm-hmm.
You draw the pelvis, the box of the pelvis. Because once you draw the pelvis, you can put the legs. You can put the spine. You can put the torso. Now I can put the table in.
Mm-hmm.
The table always comes up, depending, right about above your belly button.
Yeah.
Right about 2 fingers, 3 fingers above your belly button. Depends, again.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a little higher, but that's, one of the things that's really important to learn and to pay attention to is things like the height of chairs, the height of doors, because when you're trying to make something believable, everybody knows what it looks like to sit in a chair. Everybody knows what it looks like to hold a door, open a door. What is the height of a doorknob? I would find a lot of students in the beginning would do these beginning stories, and they would draw a door or a window like they had never seen a door or a window in their life. They weren't really paying attention to how high something is, where a doorknob is. Everything in the world is built to accommodate us and the height of the average person, right? Mm-hmm. So the easiest thing now is I've got this person here. It's really easy. I wanted to put the girl in here.
Everybody's at rapt attention, Mike Manley. It's almost like when you made a good meal, when everybody stops talking, when the chat is quiet, that means everybody's paying attention.
All right. So when I work on something like Judge Parker, and I have to draw a million times people sitting on tables and chairs, this is how I always start. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons I do this is because I can feel the space. Now, through the miracle of, I can take this.
What happened?
All right. Now, what I will do, this is the way I show people in the class. This then allows you to if I wanted to make this one panel, now everybody is sitting.
That's such a cool trick.
Right now, everybody, and I know that they're sitting, and I know that they're sitting and relating to each other. Right, so now I know this guy is sitting, and he can be, looking at his menu too. Mm-hmm. And I can see his face, his attitude of his face. Right? Man bun. And again, these are not, John Buscema beautiful level drawings. These are what I call thinking drawings.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think about the story and what do I need to show? What do I need to show? So now I see the two couples. Now, I could, if I was a live action director, I could show him pulling out the chair. her sitting down, him sitting down, him opening up the menu. They could go back and forth. But in comics, I'm probably going to be forced to condense that into a shot of them both looking at the menu.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The other thing that you would see very often in a movie would be what we call the two shot, or I should say, in a comic you would see what we call the two shot, which was that you see both people at the same time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, in a movie, you would see probably the actress and this is again where the real difference comes in, I think, in storytelling, and people kind of get confused because a lot of people have in their head not the idea of comics, but actually the idea of storytelling that comes from watching TV and movies, right? And so you would have the actress, looking at the menu, right? And then you would have a shot of the actor,
like the flop,
right?
yeah,
And he would be looking at his menu, right? He might be looking at his menu. The difference is you would cut back between those two people, right?
right.
In comics, you would combine that into, again, this shot. You would combine the shot into one shot. Right. And the other thing that you have to deal with is that they might be, again, if this is a couple, what are you getting? I don't know. What are you getting? Or you got to leave room for dialogue.
Right.
Right. What do you show in the background? Do you do we then have a shot of the next shot is the shot of the waiter coming over?
Yeah.
If he's going to be talking, I know there's going to be. So this is going to be a 3-shot. So I'm going to see the girl, maybe here. And I try to draw what a lot of times when I'm figuring out how to piece things together, I sort of think of everything as a silhouette. Like if I was going to cut this out of a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Right. And it's sort of like a fitting this puzzle together. So now I can tell from this silhouette, I can see his face. And from this silhouette, I can see her face or her angle. And from his face, maybe he also has a man bun.
Dun, dun.
Right. So he's saying, hey, what would you like? And of course, you put your menu down on the table. Or maybe he's saying, I'll take the blah, 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 blah.
Sure.
Right. Now I might again put some things in the background. Maybe again a window.
Right.
Some motif. Was there tropical plants? Was there another table of people back here? Right. But I want her to be able to look. Let's see, if I laid this out, I could give this to anybody, and they could draw it in any style they wanted. You know, you could get models and pose it out, and draw it realistically, or you could draw it real cartoony. You know,
Right. And I think it bears to say, especially when you guys are watching this stuff live, if you're a cartoonist in training, if you're enthusiast, or if you're in the business or whatever, I think sometimes it's hard to separate the magic from the lesson, right? As you know, even in watching other people draw on like YouTube, it's like you just kind of get lost in the drawing or the hand motion. But all this stuff is really strong advice. So you know, I'm always trying to tell students that don't worry so much about that. You know, Mike or myself drew this thing so cool. Like look at the other part, like the lesson part, if that makes sense.
right?
And Mike, look, you just drew a whole page of comics.
I laid out a whole page of comics.
A whole page of comics.
Right. And this is just the setup.
Yeah.
Right. This is just the setup. And again, you can see how you can this panel. I decided to make this panel a little bit bigger. Right. Maybe I want this more of the space between them because they're disagreeing. So there's a graded, so there's a little bit of space. Maybe even putting the word balloon between them psychologically enhances the idea that they're not happy with each other. Right. That's what's important about, again, looking for story, looking for something. Can I do something? Can I lay this stuff out in a way that will enhance that feeling of maybe this couple being isolated or not being, you know, we can start seeing, oh, you're starting to have a disagreement. Here's a disagreement. You know, he's going to order something, but maybe on the next page.
Is this a fish? Is this a fishy fish? I heard this is a fishy fish.
Right. Are there any questions so far?
No, there's just a lot of head nodding. Our buddy Trey says, "I'm not a cartoonist, but I aspire to be." What up, Trey? I'm going to try the 6-panel exercise. That's awesome. Our good buddy Benaya, what up, Bunny? Says it's hard to force yourself to stop worrying and really problem solve what you're trying to say when drawing.
Well, what I hope, that's a good comment. What I'm hoping is that by working out the structure this way, you solve your anxiety, except maybe for your anxiety of drawing, which everybody has about drawing. And sometimes, you know, it's just difficult. Sometimes you're trying to draw something and it's difficult and you have a hard time. Then you take a photo, you know, pose yourself, pose a friend.
Yeah.
Find a photo to use. Everybody you admire used photographs. Everybody used photographs, especially in the more realistic strips.
Yeah.
Even in sometimes the cartoony stuff, people would take photographs just to get the positions of the figures correctly or convincingly. You know, a lot of times people sitting down and eating at a table is a lot harder to draw than Captain America punching the Red Skull through a wall. It is because you know what people look like sitting at a table.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what Captain America punching somebody through a wall looks like, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you have a lot more leeway to play around with that, right? So continuing on with our story, maybe the girl goes, no. I don't want that.
Mm. Tension.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I always think of the silhouette. Right. I'm trying to get the story, the gesture, without at this point worrying about the drawing. One of the things I learned early on, and especially from doing the strips, is if you get too caught up in a drawing, what happens is you can do a drawing that you love, but it doesn't work for the story.
Right.
Right. And then the hardest thing is to say, I got to get rid of this drawing. This drawing is not working. Right. So maybe she's saying, and he's like, what?
Mm-hmm. Right, it's like, Shorty, you late, and you making me look bad in front of my man bun brethren.
All right. Again, and I'm leaving plenty of room for dialogue.
Yeah.
You know, this guy's, he's got to be holding his. Now, maybe this is one of those fancy restaurants where the guy's holding the thing, but he's actually not actually writing anything down.
Good choice, sir. Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Mike, I have a question. Our buddy Eternity Forever says, is it always best to focus attention on the characters acting like we're doing now than their environment to convey emotion in the scene?
Yes. When this part of the story is focusing on the characters, it's not the previous was focusing on the scene.
Right.
Focusing on one of the scene, focusing on the scene for the setup, but now we're in with the characters and their interrelationship. So now I'm in focusing on them. If I were to suddenly do like, put plants and vases and, maybe let's say there's a table of people here and the guy is, cooking one of those flaming things, right? So you got a chef, right?
Yeah.
And I put a couple here and they're getting their thing. And then I put our couple
back there. Mm-hmm.
with the waiter.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That is the best drawing I've ever did.
No, that's fantastic.
Right. All right. Now, but if I do that, what do we get? We get all this with, the rich people and they're getting their flaming dinner.
Flaming mignon.
Right. But now I've pulled so far back, I'm sort of trying to build up to them having a disagreement. Right. By pulling back, I remove all the tension. Right. So I would say if you wanted to do this in the beginning, right?
Like
if
you would flip those, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I could do that shot after this, then it would work. But now if I pull too far back, I'm not going to see their faces and they become incidental to this background. So I've actually, I push the background in front. It doesn't really, to me, that's not a good choice. Right?
Well, Mike, I'm not pushing back, but one thing is maybe that shot could be used somewhere in the story to maybe convey that they're making a scene, like they're getting loud, and or something
right,
like that, right?
right. So maybe we did right. We come back to that later. So the order, maybe I want a little more tension.
Mm-hmm.
She's very she wants to try something different,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the lady will have the gazpacho. I don't want
Right.
gazpacho.
And maybe she, maybe we go back to a shot like that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe she's dominant, and so
Mm-hmm.
she's asserting herself.
Mm-hmm.
She's
Hey,
handing the menu.
yeah, to the server, like, here, I'm done. Take this. Hey, our buddy Nick. What up, Nick? Asks Mike. Do you need to have at least one panel per page with background elements to keep the scene established until it switches?
Uh, I would say you're always trying to put some element of the background in all the time,
Mm-hmm.
right? Except maybe in a close up. Right now, I could, let's say, if I did have, some right? I could have this here. Sometimes it doesn't take a lot. You know what
Right.
I mean? I may eliminate that background, right? I may take that background out just because I want to focus on the two people, right? See, so as soon as I take that background out, you really focus on the two people.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the little things you can do in comics. You can't really take backgrounds out in live action. You can set up the focus, the depth of focus, so that the background could be out of focus and the actor's face could be very in focus. You can do a lot of things like that. You see directors do that all the time. But in comics, very often you would see they would just eliminate the background. So you could have you could have just
What? Mm-hmm.
so again, these are not great drawings. I'm just trying to think of like how do I want to set up this drama, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I need to make this panel a little bit wider so you can see. Maybe the guy's kind of mad now, so he's got his fists on the table.
Yeah.
So man bun is mad.
Typical.
Now, again,
Typical.
right? And maybe I'm using some simple framing device,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? Some element of the background. It could be a table back there of people, right?
Mm-hmm. And also, Mike, you could, well, our buddy Tim Fielder, who we just had a great interview with last episode, spoke on that wide shot we did and said to add another angle to it. The wide shot could also be a pregnant pause, meaning the previous shot is a source of conflict, or then the wide shot would be wide with no dialogue. Then you could go back to the close up. with the conflict, which could be like, what do you mean you don't have any money? Pause. Yeah,
Well,
there's a million ways to kind of add something like that in to push the story along.
maybe the guy leaves.
Hmm.
No.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I was going to say, Mike, not to cut you off. What I was going to add is, and even with the background elements, like the awning, in the French doors and stuff like that, and the background could also be good use to spot blacks
Yes.
to add emotion or tension to the scene.
So maybe I want to pull back a little bit so I get the couple.
That's a nice shot.
Again,
Yeah.
now again, I can adjust this a little bit,
Right, and this is also relatable because I mean, even just for the content of this uh, demonstration, like everybody's been in a tense dinner,
right.
so you can connect with the characters. I
Right.
think
So
both
now I'm
ways.
thinking, yeah. So I'm thinking, maybe now they're alone,
Mhm,
right? They're
mhm.
they're 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 alone, and maybe her hands are folded. Now this is a sort of a straight-on shot,
Yeah.
right? He's sitting there. But what if I say I don't want it to be? What do I get by making it a silhouette? Right? What do I get
Hmm.
by doing this, right, and making it a silhouette of the couple? Or maybe I make him even more. And you notice, for the most part, I'm mostly doing wide, medium to wider shots.
Hmm.
I'm just thinking, like, what's going on?
Yeah, it's good acting. Yeah.
Now, this is the sort of always cheesy, what, the, hey, what's happening arm, right?
Yeah. Are we okay?
Yeah. But in this case, I'm just thinking, all right, maybe she's looking at him. Maybe her posture is a little stiff.
Hmm.
You get a chance to show that they're, you can have some dialogue. You can have a little space. Maybe this space, this weight above them, all this negative space, is important.
Yeah.
Psychologically, that negative space weighs on the characters, and it emphasizes an emotional feeling about, you know the what's going on in a relationship,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. um if I change this, right? If I change this, and let's say I want to make it more of a downside. So who's emotion in the scene? Who's doing the most acting, right? And I think the guy, as I had indicated, just again, I'm making this up on the fly, indicated the guy was doing the acting. So I would say that the perspective in that case, almost like an arrow, is pointing to him.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let's just say, I should say, I don't want the flat, just to show you how you can mess around with these ideas. So I guess it's almost like an arrow. Now I'm going to put the guy here. What's going on, Jessica?
And you know, it's great that you're adding this concept of what we call acting. You're letting these characters emote with their bodies rather than being a plus sign on the side of their forehead or like sharp teeth. You know, you're letting these actors act.
Now, of course, the 3/4 view shot is the hallmark of especially comic strips.
Yeah.
But this is a two-part. This is storytelling because you get to see both characters. I get to see her face looking at his face.
Mm-hmm.
Back
Oh,
here.
and Mike, could you touch on? And I know we almost cover this every time we do a boot camp. Can you show how the 180 rule has been at play through this whole
Okay, yeah, I'll go back.
setup?
Okay. Maybe I don't want his head so straight on. One of the things I found that adds a lot. It's a simple trick to add a lot to people in real life are very rarely straight. People are always a little. See, just that,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if I angle his head, right? Again, now we favor him,
Right.
right? Everything is sort of pointing to him. Now you get like, and I know if I do this, it's easy to come back in and say, okay, I'm going to add another table over here, but that might be covered,
Right.
right? Maybe then, since he's speaking first, her balloon would go here. What's going on?
Mm-hmm.
Or she could say something and then he could be reacting to it. Right. That, as opposed to that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Which works better?
Right. So, well, let me.
Some of that might be style,
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes people who are very, like Will Eisner, let's say the more cartoony cartoonist, might do something where you do a lot of silhouettes, a lot of cartoony stuff. Does do a lot more silhouettes. Like if you look at old comic strips, you look at stuff that's more cartoony. People like Hank Ketchum. You would see a lot of stuff that would be silhouettes. Like you could do that as a silhouette, right? The people who tended to draw more realistic, like Neil Adams, would probably do something like that, right?
No. Do you think? Well, here's a good question about dynamism, right? Is the appeal to make things funky and Dutch angle type things when you're trying to do an emotional kind of relatable human scene like this important? Does it make it? I mean, like, where's the line with boring versus not boring when you're trying to tell a story like this?
Okay, so we could stage just yet this talking from another angle.
Mm-hmm.
We could go like a really low angle.
Mm. You're covering all the bases, Mike.
So here's the table, and you could do a low angle, and you could see his face.
Mm.
Right? Except it's harder to get her head in there,
Yeah.
right? Because if I reduce this, let's say I want to reduce this so that I want to get her head in there. One of the things I'm always thinking about is space. Easiest thing to think about space is to think about boxes. So this guy's a box. Then she's a box, and I can kind of get the perspective on her torso by putting it in a box.
Mm-hmm.
Right now what I've done is I've come up with a different solution.
Mm-hmm. Mike, would you say that there is and again, this kind of comes down to style and storytelling, but do you think there's an amateur or wrong way to do a scene like this? Like, you could do like a 9 panel, her head, his head, her head, his head. Somebody
Again, that there's
Right.
some people that would do that,
Yeah,
and depending upon the type of storytelling that you're setting up, the
yeah.
parameters of your storytelling, as
Mhm.
long as it tells a story and it hits the emotional beats, I don't think there's any one way, right? Because if I gave this to Jack Kirby, he would draw it one way. Joe Kubert would draw it one way. Mobius would draw it one way. A manga artist would draw it one way.
Jamar Nicholas.
Joe Nicholas would draw it one. You would draw it one way, different
Mm-hmm.
than right. So now I've created a more difficult angle,
Yeah.
more difficult drawing angle. Number
Right.
one,
Right.
this requires a lot more, foreshortening.
Yeah. That's some heavy lifting right there. And what a great way to talk about how to make something as boring, quote unquote, as a couple eating dinner not boring.
Well, your job always as the storyteller is to entertain, to make it entertaining and not boring, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because and as you can see, I can change the emotional feeling of these scenes quite a bit by All right. So there's that one, or that one. They all tell the story. Right? They all tell the story. Here's a couple having a disagreement.
Yeah.
Right? Which one do you as the storyteller think is the most effective? Right? I think that comes down to personality. If Spielberg, again, if you take a story, no two film directors are going to tell it the same. No two comic book artists are going to tell it the same. Some who really like drawing difficult foreshortening might be really drawn to that.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Joe Kubert would say very often a way of making things interesting is to put the camera where the camera isn't. You never have a camera down by somebody's elbow. Right? So that makes it interesting, right? Now, maybe if there's an interesting dome,
Now you're just showing off.
right?
Right.
Because we had shown that in the
at the front. I mean, in the establishing shot.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I think this works, but I don't know if it works as effectively as this to show that there's a distance between the two couples.
Yeah.
This is certainly more dynamic, but is dynamics what is called for in this particular scene? What works better, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I think you have in each scene is the two characters, the space, and the environment, and them, the distance between them, right? They all work. But which one do you feel emotionally works the best? Personally, I think that one works the best. Because the space here is also part of the story, can also contribute psychologically to the story, right? I don't think here either space contributes psychologically to the story in the way that this one contributes psychologically to the story, because it focuses more on them, and then this big weight, psychologically weighted, pushes down on them.
Yeah.
Right? So I think psychologically, to me, this works better. Right? But again, you're going to have artists who would choose this shot or artists who would choose this shot, and they do work. But to me, the art of storytelling is the emotional part, not because these drawings are crap. These are not fantastic drawings, right? But the emotions come through even at this very loose stage, right? So maybe in this last shot, if you see her hand, I'm going to break this into another panel. Maybe she and again, this is exactly how I work stuff out. I wouldn't do it probably in Clip Studio. I would do it on paper. But I would ask myself those questions, especially about a panel like that, right? Maybe I would have her hands on the table. Maybe this hand is covered.
She's taking her ring off.
Oh, you already guessed it.
Oh no, did I spoil it?
No. right? But say I want to do that, and then I want her to like. The next panel could be her
Mm-hmm.
taking off her ring.
Mm-hmm. Master Chief. Damn, man, bun man, you done messed up.
Now this would probably be one where it would help to take a photograph of her hand, somebody's hand, right?
The chat's going crazy.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. Or maybe I don't want that angle. Maybe I want.
Poor man, bun man. He can't win. He got his girl robbed in the last episode. Now he's getting divorced. But yeah, like fun and games aside, like this is just fantastic um, problem solving.
So I would do things like play around with the angle of her
Mm-hmm.
hand.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times I would just use my own hands
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
somebody wasn't here that I could do. I would play around with my own hands, and I could just turn it into. But here, maybe I want that.
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to put his face in there?
Right. Oh, like him reacting to the hand. But Jessica.
Right.
Right.
All right. So is it more effective to have his face in there, or is it more effective to take his face out?
Right.
Right. And more effective to make this bigger.
Right.
Right. Is it
Right.
more effective to do that? And then, because we're at the bottom of the page, this, and then you flip the page,
Right.
right?
Right.
Um, I think either work. This sort of is the big buildup, and then you have to turn the page, because that's a big part of reading comics is building up, setting up, turning the page, building up, setting up, turning the
Turning
page,
page. Yeah.
right? I personally sort of like this one better,
Mm-hmm.
because then the next page could be, well, what do I want on the next page? Do I want them, or what I would do is I could take, turn this back on, get rid of this, I could keep this because maybe you want a lot of dialogue, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Then you see her hand, and then you reveal, you know. Or do you get rid of this? Take this, slide this over here,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have
And we're gonna start wrapping it up. We almost blew through 2 hours, Mike Manley. So this will be a great place to cap the episode.
she handed the ring back.
Mm.
I do a lot of erasing when I'm drawing. I feel erasing is part of drawing. I know a lot of people get this thing like, well, you know, you don't want to erase, you know.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it is sometimes you got to draw something wrong or draw something and then it doesn't feel right, you know, and then you redraw it.
I would be remiss, Mike. Tim Fielder's shouting in the chat. Oh, close out the scene with the ring dropped in the wine glass. He's like waving from the rafters.
Right. So do I want that
Mm-hmm.
that angle or do I want um
You know how much this Freshienet costs? Mike, while you're putting a button on that, I have a couple of things I wanted to ask real quick.
okay.
And the chat has been rolling by so fast I lost the first row of questions. But our buddy Big Joe Forbes, what up, Joe? Asks, and I'm just going to say what he said. Do you think something has been lost in comics as they've started to phase out thought balloons?
Personally, yeah. I mean, I think anything that you have any tool that is less to tell a story is not a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think the word balloons were, I think, a great way to show especially with certain characters, you know, like Spider-Man or, you know, I think, yeah,
Okay.
I believe in word balloons.
And also, Tim asks, do you enjoy doing breakdowns and have you done them for other artists? You've got the magic touch, dude.
Have I done breakdowns for other artists? I've probably inked more of other artists' breakdowns than having done breakdowns for other artists. Um,
Bloop. And while Mike's finishing this drawing, that's a lot of echo. Also remember that all of our previous episodes of Pencil to Pencil are right here on the internet. Just because you missed it doesn't mean it disintegrated. Go back and watch all of the boot camps if you missed any. The stuff still is there for you.
and of course, by having this here, I set this up, right? By having that there, I set this up later.
Right.
So we've had our little, again, our little disagreement. This might only be the beginning. I mean, he might take the glass and throw the glass of the ring in her face and storm out. But you're looking for the right angle to show faces, to show the emotion, to show the acting. You prioritize things by what the emotion is in the scene. Who carries the emotion? Again, which character is carrying the emotion? You want to favor that person, favor the angle on their faces, the angle that you choose to pose the body or to pose to show the face is going to either make it easier to see an expression or harder to see an expression.
Right.
Everything, every element in the background is able to be slid around and used to support your composition. Again, to support your composition emotionally. So again, this is just a very quick little scenario. So we go in just 2 pages, establishing shot, couple comes in, guy's impatient, waiting. They come in, they sit down, beginning of a disagreement, they're sitting there looking, waiter comes, as soon as the waiter leaves, or there's a disagreement in what she wants to order. What? Very well. They leaves. The pregnant pause. She takes her ring off. Boom. Right. Very simple exercise in storytelling. Again, you could go back over this and explore different angles as I showed you with this scene. But you always prioritize storytelling. And that's the most important thing as a comic book artist or a storyboard artist is storytelling, If you did great drawings, but it's not very clear and you can't really tell whether the characters are disagreeing with each other, the body language is bad, or you focus on the wrong thing, then it's not going to be as clear or obvious to the reader. So this is how I approach it, right? This is how I approach it. And again, when I begin laying out something like the Phantom or Judge Parker or anything, this is the way I start. Very loose like this, work out the ideas for the story. Then I go in. In fact, now I used to do, as many people will see, if you see my social media, my Instagram and my Twitter and everything, or even my Facebook, I used to do a lot of layouts. But actually now I just work right on the board. I don't do any layouts. I just think like I'm doing here, draw it out. If it doesn't work, at this stage, I have invested seconds, as you can see, of drawing time. It's mostly thinking. At this stage, thinking is the priority. Drawing is not the priority. Drawing comes later. Drawing comes in service of what I've set up here.
Beautiful. And with that, we will bid you adieu. That was awesome. Guys, thanks Wow, where's that echo coming from? That's horrible. Um, Guys, thanks so much for hanging out with us tonight. I don't know where the time goes, but thank you, Mike, for the masterclass.
Oh, I'm more than happy to do that. I'm always happy to look at people's samples if they send it to me at the Mike at actionplanet.com, or if you would like to see some other craft related, yes, PayPal $1 million to Mike Manley at actionplanet.com. Have any other questions about craft? You're always welcome to send them along my way.
Yeah, that's great. And like I said, don't forget to check out our catalog. Like I said, we had a great episode with Tim Fielder last week. It's still on the internet. Go look at it. We've had a million boot camps. Go look at them and tell your friends, share, like, and subscribe. That's the only way we let the channel grow. So, all right, I'm going to go put out some fires in my house. So, thank you guys all for your support. We'll see you here again next week, same time, same back channel. Thank you guys so much, and thank you to Mike. And you know what to do now, guys.
And thank you to you.
Oh, thank you, Mike Manley. All right, you guys, let's wash those curvy hands and get out of here. We'll see you soon. See you next week. Pow.